Hello, welcome back to another of our story time at the yard. So I'm Beth, and today I'm going to be continuing reading The Last Wish for you all. So let's get started. I am on chapter called The Lesser Evil. So this is The Lesser Evil 1. As usual, cats and children noticed him first. A striped tomcat, sleeping on a sun-warmed stack of wood, shuddered, raised his round head, pulled back his ears, hissed and bolted off into the nettles. 3-year-old Dragomir, fisherman Triegler's son, who was sitting on the hut's threshold, doing his best to make the dirtier than already dirty shirt, started to scream as he fixed his tearful eyes on the passing rider. The Witcher rode slowly, without trying to overtake the hay cart obstructing the road. A laden donkey trotted behind him, stretching its neck, and constantly pulling the cord tied to the Witcher's pommel tight. In addition to the usual bags, the long-eared animal was lugging a large shape, wrapped in a saddlecloth, on its back. The grey-white flanks of the arse were covered with black streaks of dried blood. The cart finally turned down a side street, leading to a granary and harbour from which a sea breeze blew. Carrying the stink of tar and ox's urine, Geralt picked up his pace. He didn't react to the muffled cry of the woman selling vegetables who was staring at the bony, talon paw sticking out beneath the horse blanket, bobbing up and down in time with the donkey's trot. He didn't look around at the crowd gathering behind him and rippling with excitement. There were, as usual, many carts in front of the alderman's house. Geralt jumped from the saddle, adjusted the sword on his back, and threw the reins over the wooden barrier. The crowd following him formed a semicircle around the donkey. Even outside, the alderman's shouts were audible. "It's forbidden, I tell you. Forbidden, goddammit! Can't you understand what I say, you scoundrel?" Geralt entered. In front of the alderman, small, podgy, and red with rage, stood a villager, holding a struggling goose by the neck. "What? By all the gods! Is that you, Geralt? Do my eyes deceive me?" And turning to the peasant again, "Take it away, you boor! Are you deaf?" "They said," mumbled the villager, squinting at the goose, "that a wee something must be given to his lordship otherways." "Who said?" yelled the alderman. "Who? That I supposedly take bribes? I won't allow it, I say. Away with you." "Greetings, Geralt." "Greetings, Keldman." The alderman squeezed the witcher's hand, slapped him on the shoulder. "You haven't been here for 2 good years." "Geralt, eh? You can never stay in one place for long, can you?" "Where are you coming from?" "Ah, dog's arse. What's the difference where? Hey, somebody bring us some beer. Sit down, Geralt, sit down. It's mayhem here, because we've the market tomorrow. How are things with you? Tell me." "Later. Come outside first." The crowd outside had grown twofold, but the empty space around the donkey hadn't grown any smaller. Geralt threw the horse blanket aside. The crowd gasped and pulled back. Caldman's mouth fell open. "By all the gods, Geralt, what is it?" "A kikimora." "Is there any reward for it?" Calderman shifted from foot to foot, looking at the spidery shape with its dry black skin, that glassy eye with its vertical pupil, the needle-like fangs in the bloody jaws. "Where? From where?" "On the dike, not some 4 miles from town. On the swamps, Calderman. People must have disappeared there. Children." "Well, yes, true enough, but nobody—" "Who could have guessed? Hey, folks, go home, get back to work. This isn't a show. Cover it up, Geralt. Flies are gathering." Back inside, the alderman grabbed a large jug of beer without a word and drank it to the last drop in one draught. He sighed deeply and sniffed. "There's no reward," he said gloomily. No one suspected that there was something like that lurking in the salt marshes. It's true that several people have disappeared in those parts, but hardly anyone loitered on that dike. And why were you there? Why weren't you taking the main road? It's hard for me to make a living on the main roads, Calderman. I forgot. The alderman suppressed a belch, puffing out his cheeks. And this used to be such a peaceful neighbourhood. Even imps only rarely pissed in the women's milk. And here, right next to us, some sort of felespectre. It's only fitting that I thank you, because as for paying you, I can't. I haven't the funds. That's a shame. I could do with a small sum to get through the winter. The Witcher took a sip from his jug, wiped away the froth. I'm making my way to Yasburn, but I don't know I'll get there before the snow blocks the way. I might get stuck in one of the little towns on Lutensky Road. Do you plan to stay long in Blaviken? No, I've no time to waste. Winter's coming. Where are you going to stay? With me, perhaps? There's an empty room in the attic. Why get fleeced by innkeepers? Those thieves. We'll have a chat, and you can tell me what's happening in the big, wide world. Willingly. But what will Libushi have to say about it? It was quite obvious last time that she's not very keen on me. Women don't have a say in my house. But, just between us, don't do what you did during supper last time in front of her again. You mean when I threw my fork at that rat? No, I mean when you hit it, even in the dark. I thought it would be amusing. It was, but don't do it in front of Libushi. And listen, this, what's it called? Kikimora? Do you need it for anything? What would I want it for? You can have them throw it in the cesspool if there's no reward for it. That's not a bad idea. Hey, Kulraka, Borg, Carry Pebble. Any of you there? The town guard entered with a halberd on his shoulder, the blade catching the door frame with a crash. Carry Pebble, said Calderman. Get somebody to help you and take the donkey with that muck wrapped up in the horse blanket. Lead it past the pigsties and chuck the Kikimora in the cesspool. Understood? At your command, but... Alderman, sir. What? Maybe before we drown that hideous thing. Well, we could show it to Master Arian. It might be useful to him. Calderman slapped his forehead with his open palm. You're not stupid, Carry Peril. Listen, Geralt, maybe our local wizard will spare you something for that carcass. The fishermen bring him the oddest fish of octopodes, clabaters, or herrings. Many have made some money on them. Come on, let's go to the tower. You've got yourselves a wizard. Is he here for good or only passing? For good. Master Arian has been living in Blaviken for a year, a powerful magus. Geralt, you'll see that from his very appearance. I doubt whether a powerful magus will pay for a Kikimora. Geralt grimaced. As far as I know, it's not needed for any elixirs. Your Irian will only insult me, no doubt. We witches and wizards don't love each other. I've never heard of Master Irian insulting anyone. I can't say that he'll pay you, but there's no harm in trying. There might be more Kikimoras like that on the marshes, and what then? Let the wizard look at the monster and cast some sort of spell on the marshlands, or something, just in case. The Witcher thought for a moment. Very well, Caldman. What the heck? We'll risk meeting with Master Irian. Shall we go? We're off. Carry Pebble, chase the kids away and bring the floppy ears. Where's my hat? 2. The tower, built from smoothly hewn blocks of granite and crowned by tooth-like battlements, was impressive, dominating the broken tiles of homesteads and dipping-roofed thatched cottages. He's renovated it, I see, remarked Geralt. Well, spells, or did he have you working at it? Spells, chiefly. What's he like, this Irian? Decent. He helps people, but he's a recluse. Doesn't say much. He rarely leaves the tower. On the door, which was adorned with rochettes inlaid with pale wood, hung a huge knocker in the shape of a flat, bulging-eyed fish head, holding a brass ring in its toothed jaws. Calderman, obviously well versed with the workings of its mechanics, approached, cleared his throat, and recited, Alderman Caldman, greets you with a case for Master Irian. With him greets you Witcher Geralt, with respect to the same case. For a long moment nothing happened. Then finally the fish head moved its toothed mandibles and belched a loud cloud of steam. Master Irian is not receiving. Leave, my good people. Calderman waddled on the spot and looked at Geralt. The Witcher shrugged. Pebble picked his nose with serious concentration. Master Irian is not receiving, the knocker repeated metallically. Go, my good. I'm not a good person, Geralt broke in loudly. I'm a witcher. That thing on the donkey is a kikimora, and I killed it, not far from town. It's the duty of every resident wizard to look after the safety of the neighbourhood. Master Irian does not have to honour me with conversation, does not have to receive me, if that is his will, but let him examine the kikimora and draw his own conclusions. Pebble, unstrap the kikimora and throw it down by the door. Geralt, the alderman said quietly, you're going to leave? But I'm going to have to. Let's go, Calderman. Pebble, take that finger out of your nose and do as I said. One moment, the knocker said in an entirely different tone. Geralt, is that really you? The Witcher swore quietly. I'm losing patience. Yes, it really is me. So what? Come up to the door, said the knocker, puffing out a small cloud of steam. Alone, I'll let you in. What about the kikimora? To hell with it. I want to talk to you, Geralt. Just you. Forgive me, Alderman. What's it to me, Master Irian? Calderman waved the matter aside. Take care, Geralt. We'll see each other later. Pebble, into the cesspool with the monster. As you command. The Witcher approached the inlaid door, which opened a little bit, just enough for him to squeeze through, and then slammed shut, leaving him in complete darkness. Hey, he shouted, not hiding his anger. Just a moment, answered a strangely familiar voice. The feeling was so unexpected that the Witcher staggered and stretched out his hand looking for support. He didn't find any. The orchard was blooming with white and pink and smelled of rain. The sky was split by a many-coloured arc of rainbows, which bound the crowns of the trees to the distant blue chain of the mountains. The house nestled in the orchard, tiny and modest, was drowning in hollyhocks. Geralt looked down and discovered that he was up to his knees in time. Well, come on, Geralt, said the voice. I'm in front of the house. He entered the orchard, walking through the trees. He noticed a movement to his left and looked round. A fair-haired girl, entirely naked, was walking along a row of shrubs carrying a basket full of apples. The Witcher solemnly promised himself that nothing would surprise him any more. At last, Greetings, Witcher. Stregobor? Geralt was surprised. During his life, the Witcher had met thieves who looked like town councillors, councillors who looked like beggars, harlots who looked like princesses, princesses who looked like carving cows, and kings who looked like thieves. But Stregobor always looked as, according to every rule and notion, a wizard should look. He was tall, thin, and stooping, with enormous bushy grey eyebrows and a long, crooked nose. To top it off, he wore a black, trailing robe with improbably wide sleeves and wielded a long staff capped with a crystal knob. None of the wizards Geralt knew looked like Stregobor. Most surprising of all was that Stregobor was, indeed, a wizard. They sat in wicker chairs at a white marble-top table on a porch surrounded by hollyhocks. The naked blonde with the apple basket approached, smiled, turned, and swaying her hips returned to the orchard. "Is that an illusion too?" asked Gerald, watching the sway. "It is, like everything here. But it is, my friend, a first-class illusion. The flowers smell, you can eat the apples, the bee can sting you, and the wizard indicated the blonde. You can, maybe later. Quite right. What are you doing here, Gerald? Are you still toiling away, killing the last representatives of dying species for money? How much did you get for that kikimora?" "Nothing, I guess, or you wouldn't have come here. And to think that there are people who don't believe in destiny. Unless you knew about me. Did you?" "No, I didn't. It's the last place I could have expected you. If memory serves me correctly, you used to live in a similar tower in Kavir. A great deal has changed since then. Such is your name. Apparently you are Master Irian now. That's the name of the man who created this tower. He died about 200 years ago, and I thought it right to honour him in some way since I occupied his abode. I'm living here. Most of the inhabitants live off the sea, and, as you know, my specialty, apart from illusions, is weather. Sometimes I'll calm a storm, sometimes conjure one up, sometimes drive schools of whiting and cod closer to the shores with the westerly wind. I can survive. That is," he added, "miserably. I could." "How come I could? Why the change of name?" "Destiny has many faces. Mine is beautiful on the outside and hideous on the inside. She has stretched her bloody talons towards me." "You've not changed a bit, Stregobor," Geralt grimaced. "You're talking nonsense while making wise and meaningful faces. Can't you speak normally?" "I can," sighed the wizard. "I can if that makes you happy. I made it all the way here, hiding and running from a monstrous being that wants to murder me. My escape proved in vain. It found me. In all probability, it's going to try and kill me tomorrow, or at least the day after." "Aha!" said the Witcher dispassionately. "Now I understand. Why facing death doesn't impress you much, does it?" "Stregobor," said Geralt, "that's the way of the world. One sees all sorts of things when one travels. 2 peasants kill each other over a field, which the following day will be trampled flat by 2 counts and their retinues trying to kill each other off. Men hang from trees at the roadside. Brigands slash merchants' throats. At every step in town, you trip over corpses in the gutters. In palaces, they stab each other with daggers, and somebody falls under the table at a banquet every minute, blue from poisoning. I'm used to it. So why would such a death impress me? And one directed at you at that." "One directed at me at that?" Stregobor repeated with a sneer. "And I considered you a friend, counted on your help." "Our last meeting," said Geralt, "was in the court of the King Idi of Kavir. I'd come to be paid for a killing of the amphiboan, which had been terrorizing the neighborhood. You and your compatriot Zavis feed with each other, so they call me a charlatan, a thoughtless, murdering machine, and a scavenger. Consequently, not only didn't Idi pay me a penny, he gave me 12 hours to leave Kavir, and since his hourglass was broken, I barely made it. And now you say you're counting on my help? You say a monster's after you? What are you afraid of, Stregobor? If it catches up with you, tell it you like monsters, that you protect them, and make sure no witch or scavenger ever troubles their peace. Indeed, if the monster disembowels and devours you, it will prove terribly ungrateful." The wizard turned his head away silently. Geralt laughed. "Don't get all puffed up like a frog, magician. Tell me what's threatening you. We'll see what can be done." "Have you heard of the curse of the Black Sun?" "But of course. Except that it was called the Mania of Mad Elitabald, after the Witcher who started the lark and caused dozens of girls from good, even noble families to be murdered or imprisoned in towers. They were supposed to be possessed by demons, cursed, contaminated by the black sun, because that's what, in your pompous jargon, you called the most ordinary eclipse in the world. Ellisbold wasn't mad at all. He deciphered the writing on dork menhirs on tombstones in Wasgo necropolises and examined the legends and traditions of Wertos. All of them spoke of the eclipse in no uncertain terms. The black sun was to announce the imminent return of Lililt, still honoured in the East under the name of Naya, and the extermination of the human race. Lililt's path was preferred by 60 women wearing gold crowns, who would fill the river valleys with blood. Nonsense, said the Witcher. And what's more, it doesn't rhyme. All decent predictions rhyme. Everyone knows that. Elitterbold and the Council of Wizards had in mind at the time. What? You took advantage of a madman's ravings to strengthen your own authority, to break up alliances, ruin marriage alliances, stir up dynasties. In a word, to tangle the strings of crown puppets even more. And here you are lecturing me about predictions, which any old storyteller at the marketplace would be ashamed of. You can have your reservations about Elitterbold's theories and about how predictions were interpreted, but you can't challenge the fact that there have been horrendous mutations among girls born just after the eclipse. And why not? I've heard quite the opposite. I was present when they did an autopsy on one of them, said the wizard. Geralt, what we found inside the skull and marrow could not be described. Some sort of red sponge. The internal organs were all mixed up. Some were completely missing. Everything was covered in moving cilia, bluish-pink shreds. The heart was 6-chambered, with 2 chambers practically atrophied. What do you say to that? I've seen people with eagle's talons inside of hands, people with wolf's fangs, people with additional joints, additional organs and additional senses, all of which were the effects of your messing about with magic. You've seen all sorts of mutations, you say? The magician raised his head. And how many of them have you slaughtered for money, in keeping with your witch's calling? Well, because one can have wolf fangs, and go no further than bearing them at the trollops in the taverns, or one can have wolf's nature too, and attack children. And that's just how it was with the girls who were born after the eclipse. Their outright insane tendency to cruelty, aggression, sudden bursts of anger, and an unbridled temperament were noted. You can say that about any woman, sneered Geralt. What are you drivelling on about? You're asking me how many mutants I've killed. Why aren't you interested in how many I've extricated from spells, freed from curses? I, a witcher, despised by you, and what you have done, you mighty magicians. A higher magic was used, ours and that of the priests in various temples. All attempts ended in the girls' deaths. That speaks badly of you, not the girls. And so we've now got to get the first corpses. I take it the only autopsies were done on them. No, don't look at me like that. You know very well that there were more corpses too. It was initially decided to eliminate all of them. We got rid of a few. Autopsies were done on all of them. One of them was even vivisectioned. And you son of bitches have a nerve to criticise witches? Oh, Stregobor, the day will come when people will learn and get the better of you. I don't think a day like that will come soon, said the wizard caustically. Don't forget that we were acting in the people's defence. The mutant girls would have drowned entire countries in blood. So you say, magicians, turning your noses up, so high and mighty, with your auras of infallibility. While we're on the subject, Surely you're not going to tell me that in your hunt for these so-called mutants, you haven't made one mistake? All right, said Stregobor, after a long silence. I'll be honest. Although for my own sake I shouldn't, we did make a mistake, more than one. Picking them out was extremely difficult, and that's why we stopped, getting rid of them and started isolating them instead. Your famous towers, snorted the Witcher. Our towers, but that was another mistake. We underestimated them. Many escaped, then some mad fashion to free imprisoned beauties took hold of princes, especially the younger ones, who didn't have much to do and still less to lose. Most of them, fortunately, twisted their necks. As far as I know, those imprisoned in the towers died quickly. It's been said you must have helped them somewhat. That's a lie, but it is true that they quickly fell into apathy, refused to eat. What is interesting is that shortly before they died, they showed signs of the gift of clairvoyance, further proof of mutation. Your proofs are coming ever less convincing. Do you have any more? I do. Sylvina, the Lady of Narok, whom we never managed to get close to because she gained power so quickly. Terrible things are happening in Narok now. Fialka, Evermir's daughter, escaped her tower using a homemade rope and now is terrorizing North Velad. Bernica of Talgar was freed by an idiot prince. Now he's sitting in a dungeon, blinded, and the most common feature of the Talgar landscape is set of gallows. There are other examples too. Of course there are, said the Witcher. In Yarmulak, for instance, an old man, Abrad, reigns. He's got scrofula, not a single tooth in his head, was probably born some 100 years before this eclipse, and can't fall asleep unless someone's being tortured to death in his presence. He's wiped out all his relatives and emptied half of the country in crazy. How did you put it? Attacks of anger. There are also traces of rampant temperament. Apparently he was nicknamed Abrad, Jack Up the Scare, in his youth. Oh, Stregobor, it would be great if the cruelty of rulers could be explained away by mutations or curses. Excuse me. Listen, Geralt. No, you won't move me over with your reasons, nor convince me that Eltibad wasn't a murdering man. So let's get back to the monster threatening you. You'd better understand that, after the introduction you've given me, I don't like the story, but I'll hear you out. Without interrupting with spiteful comments? That I can't promise. Oh well. Stregobor slipped his hands into the sleeves of his robe. Then it'll only take longer. Well, the story begins in Craden, a small principality in the north. The wife of Fridefalk, the Prince of Craden, was Arida, a wise, educated woman. She had many exceptional adepts of magical arts in her family, and through inheritance, no doubt, she came into possession of a rare and powerful artifact, one of Nehalen's mirrors. They're chiefly used by prophets and oracles because they predict the future, accurately, albeit intricately. Arida quite often turned to the mirror. With the usual question, I take it, interrupted Geralt. Who is the fairest of them all? I know, all of Nehalen's mirrors are either polite or broken. You're wrong. Arida was more interested in her country's fate, and the mirror answered her questions by predicting a horrible death for her, and for a great number of others by the hand or fault of Fredefalk's daughter from his first marriage. Arida ensured this news reached the council, and the council sent me to Credon. I don't have to add that Fredefalk's firstborn daughter was born shortly after the eclipse. I was quite discreet for a little while. She managed to torture a canary and 2 puppies during that time, and also gouged out a servant's eyes with the handle of a comb. I carried out a few tests using curses, and most have confirmed that this little one was a mutant. I went to Arada with the news because Fredda Falk's daughter meant the world to him. Arada, as I said, wasn't stupid. Of course, Geralt interrupted again, and no doubt she wasn't head over heels in love with her stepdaughter. She preferred her own children to inherit the throne. I can guess what followed. How come nobody throttled her? And you, too, while they were at it? Strogobor sighed, raised his eyes to heaven, where the rainbow was still shimmering colourfully and picturesquely. I wanted to isolate her, but Arida decided otherwise. She sent the little one out into the forest with a hired thug, a trapper. We found him later in the undergrowth without any trousers, so it wasn't hard to recreate the turn of events. She had dug a brooch pin into his brain, through his ear, no doubt why his attention was on entirely different matters. If you think I feel sorry for him, muttered Geralt, then you're wrong. We organised a manhunt, continued Strogobor, but all traces of the little one had disappeared. I had to leave Craden in a hurry, because Fredda Falk was beginning to suspect something. Then 4 years later, I received news from Arida. She tracked down the little one, who was living in Macomb with 7 gnomes who she'd managed to convince it was more profitable to rob merchants on the roads than to pollute their lungs with dust from the mines. She was known as Shriek because she liked to impale the people she caught on a sharp pole while they were still alive. Several assassins tried, but none of them returned. Well, then it became hard to try and find anyone. Shriek had already become quite famous. She'd learnt to use a sword so well that there was hardly a man who could defy her. I was summoned, and arrived in Craden secretly, only to learn that someone had poisoned Arida. It was generally believed that it was the work of Fredda Falk, who had found himself a younger, more robust mistress. But I think it was Renfrey. Renfrey? That's what she was called. I said she poisoned Arida. Shortly after, Prince Fredda Falk died in a strange hunting accident, and Arida's eldest son disappeared without a word. That must have been the little one's doing too. I say little, but she was 17 by then, and she was pretty well developed. Meanwhile, the wizard picked up after a moment's break. She and her gnomes had become the terror of the whole of Macomb, until one day they argued about something. I don't know what, sharing out the loot, or whose turn it was to spend the night with her. Anyway, they slaughtered each other with knives. Only Shriek survived, only her, and I was in the neighbourhood at the time. We met face to face. She recognised me in a flash, and knew the part I'd played in Credon. I tell you, Geralt, I'd barely managed to utter a curse, and my hands were shaking like anything, when that wild cat flew towards me with a sword. I turned her into a neat slab of mountain crystal, 6 ells by 9. When she fell into a lethargy, I threw the slab into the gnome's mine and brought the tunnel down on it. Shabby work, commented Geralt. That spell could have been reversed. Couldn't you have burnt her to cinders? You know so many nice spells after all. No, it's not my specialty. But you're right. I did make a hash of it. Some idiot prince found her, spent a fortune on a counter curse, reversed the spell, and triumphantly took her home to some out-of-the-way kingdom in the east. His father, an old brigand, proved to have more sense. He gave his son a hiding, and questioned Shrike about the treasures which she and the gnomes had seized, and which she had hidden. His mistake was to allow his eldest son to assist him when he had her stretched out, naked on the executioner's bench. Somehow, the following day, that same eldest son, now an orphan bereft of siblings, was ruling the kingdom, and Shrike had taken over the office of first favourite, meaning she can't be ugly. That's a matter of taste. She wasn't a favourite for long, up until the first coup d'etat at the palace. To give it a grand name, it was more like a barn. It soon became clear that she hadn't forgotten about me. She tried to assassinate me 3 times in Kavir. I decided to not risk a 4th attempt and to wait her out in Pontar. Again, she found me. This time, I escaped to Angren, but she found me there too. I don't know how she does it. I cover my trace as well. It must be a feature of her mutation. What stopped you from casting another spell to turn her into crystal? Scruples? No, I don't have any of those. She had become resistant to magic. That's impossible. It's not. It's enough to have the right artifact or aura. Or this could also be associated with her mutation, which is progressing. I escaped from Angren and hid here in Arksea in Blaviken. I've lived in peace for a year, but she's tracked me down again. How do you know? Is she already in town? Yes, I saw her in the crystal ball. The wizard raised his hand. She's not alone. She's leading a gang, which shows that she's brewing something serious. Geralt, I don't have anywhere else left to run. I don't know where I could hide. The fact that you've arrived here exactly at this time can't be coincident. It's fate. The Witcher raised his eyebrows. What's on your mind? Surely it's obvious. You're going to kill her. I'm not a hired thug, Stregobor. You're not a thug. Agreed. I kill monsters for money. Beasts which endanger people. Horrors conjured up by spells and sorceries cast by the likes of you. Not people. She's not human. She's exactly a monster. A mutant. A cursed mutant. You brought a Kikimora here. Shrieks worse than a Kikimora. The Kikimora kills because it's hungry, but Shrike does it for pleasure. Kill her and I'll pay you whatever sum you ask. Within reason, of course. I've already told you. I consider the story about mutations and Lilith's curse to be nonsense. The girl has her reasons for settling her account with you, and I'm not going to get mixed up in it. Turn to the alderman, towards the town guards. You're the town wizard. You're protected by municipal law. I spit on the law, the alderman and his help, exploded Stregobor. I don't need defence. I need you to kill her. Nobody's going to get into this tower. I'm completely safe here. But what's that to me? I don't intend to spend the rest of my days here, and Shrike's not going to give up while I'm alive. Am I to sit here, in the tower, and wait for death? They did. Do you know what, magician? You should have left that hunt for the girls to other, more powerful wizards. You should have foreseen the consequences. Please, Geralt. No, Stregobor. The sorcerer was silent. The unreal sun, in its unreal sky, hadn't moved towards the zenith, but the Witcher knew it was already dusk in Blaviken. He felt hungry. Geralt, said Stregobor, when we were listening to Elderbold, many of us had doubts, but we decided to accept the lesser evil. Now I ask you to make a similar choice. Evil is evil, Stregobor, said the Witcher seriously as he got up. Lesser, greater, middling, it's all the same. Proportions negotiated, boundaries blurred. I'm not a pious hermit. I haven't done only good in my life. But if I am to choose between one evil and another, then I prefer not to choose at all. Time for me to go. We'll see each other tomorrow. Maybe, said the wizard, if you get here in time. So I'm going to leave it there for today, and I hope you all join me next week when we can find out what happens to Stregobor. See you all later. I hope you all have a great rest of your week.